Whispers of the Nile, myths and gods of ancient Egypt. Intro, the Nile at night. The air is warm, the water moves slowly, like breath. You're standing by the Nile, though you've never been here. You feel it, not as a river, but as a rhythm. A pulse beneath the sand, a whisper in the dark. This is not the Nile of maps or modernity, not the river of cruise ships and postcards. This is the Nile of memory, the Nile of myth. A place where gods are real and stars are stories, where every flood is a resurrection and every stone remembers. Before Egypt was Egypt, there was the river, and before there were kings, there were gods. You are not awake, not entirely, but your eyes are open, and the past is near. Tonight, we journey not through wars or dynasties, but through the dreams of a civilization that carved eternity into limestone and gave voice to silence. We will walk beside Ra on his solar barge, feel the grief of Isis as she gathers the pieces of Osiris, and hear the hush of the underworld as a heart is weighed against a feather. This is a story not of facts, but of meaning, of magic, of ritual, of a people who believed that to speak was to create, and to name was to hold power. Their gods were not distant. They bled, they burned, they loved. They ruled not only heaven, but the afterlife. They whispered through symbols, through temples, through wind over desert. We do not come to explain Egypt tonight. We come to listen to it, to drift on the current of its mythology, to fall asleep under the gaze of Thoth and the protection of Ma'at, to feel, if only faintly, the weight of the world's oldest stories pressing gently on our dreams. So let the night begin, let the stars turn, let us walk the sacred path of myths and gods, together, with bedtime lectures. If this journey speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe, tap the bell, and let us know which legends should lull you to sleep next. The Nile is waiting. Chapter 1. Creation in the Darkness. Long before the pyramids were raised or temples carved from stone, long before kings ruled from Thebes or Memphis, the world, as imagined by the ancient Egyptians, began not with light, but with darkness. At the edge of time, there was only the primordial ocean. The Egyptians called it Nun, a boundless, shapeless expanse of water that held within it the potential of everything, yet existed in utter stillness. It was not a sea in the physical sense, but a symbol of formlessness. Nun was not simply what preceded the world. Nun was what remained outside it, always present, encircling creation like a sleeping god watching from the edges. From this endless dark water, the first god emerged. His name was Atum, sometimes equated with Ra, and he did not appear in a flash of fire or with a thunderclap, but by willing himself into existence. Atum was the self-created one, a divine singularity. In some versions of the myth, he rose from a lotus blossom. In others, he stood upon a mound, the first land to rise from the sea, known as the Benben. This mound, symbolic of the moment the Nile's waters receded to reveal fertile soil, was perhaps Egypt's earliest metaphor for the birth of order from chaos. Atum, alone in this new world, began the act of creation. Through an act of thought and breath, not through violence as in many other ancient mythologies, he gave birth to the first divine pair, Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. These two were not born in the human sense. Rather, they emerged from Atum's own essence. In some versions, he spat them into existence. In others, he shed a tear, and from that tear came life. The imagery is intentionally fluid, emphasizing that creation was both physical and symbolic, an expression of divine will and cosmic balance. Shu and Tefnut, in turn, gave rise to Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. But unlike many later depictions, Geb and Nut were not static backgrounds to human activity. They were living beings, eternally intertwined. Nut was imagined as a woman arched over the earth, her body forming the canopy of the heavens, her fingertips and toes touching the cardinal points. Geb lay beneath her, his back flat against the ground. Between them, Shu held them apart, his arms forever raised, separating sky from earth, light from darkness, eternity from the temporal. Every night, Nut would swallow the sun, and every morning she would give birth to it again, an eternal cycle that mirrored the rhythms of Egyptian life. The sun, personified as Ra, would then journey across the sky and through the underworld, repeating his voyage endlessly. This cosmology was not just a story. It was a map of the universe and a model for existence. The Egyptians believed that the world functioned through Ma'at, the principle of balance, truth, and order. Creation itself was seen as the triumph of Ma'at over Isfet, the force of chaos. Every ritual, every offering, every temple wall engraved with these myths was part of maintaining that cosmic balance. It's important to understand that there was no single version of the Egyptian creation myth. In Heliopolis, Atum was the central figure. In Hermopolis, creation began with 8 deities known as the Ogdoad, 4 male-female pairs representing the primordial elements: water, infinity, darkness, and hiddenness. In Memphis, Ptah, the god of craftsmen, created the world not with hands, but with speech and thought, declaring existence into being. These differences did not compete with each other, but coexisted. For the Egyptians, truth was layered. Myth was not a single narrative, but a chorus of meanings. What unified these traditions was their reverence for the act of creation as a sacred emergence from formlessness, a beginning not born of war, but of will. The world, in their telling, was not conquered into shape. It was spoken into harmony. The concept of magic, Heka, was embedded in creation itself. It was not a trick or illusion, but a force as real and fundamental as gravity. Heka was the energy that allowed gods to act and priests to intervene. It was believed to be older even than the gods. Creation, then, was not just a divine act, but a magical one. Words had power. Names had power. To name a thing was to shape its essence. To speak was to create. This belief had profound consequences. Temples were built as echoes of the cosmos, with ceilings painted as the sky goddess Nut, columns as bundles of reeds rising from the primeval swamp, sanctuaries as the sacred mound. The rituals performed inside them were reenactments of creation, maintaining the structure of the world day by day. Even kingship was rooted in this mythic framework. The pharaoh was not merely a ruler, he was the embodiment of divine order. His coronation, his actions, even his breath were seen as extensions of the first moment of creation. His role was not to innovate, but to restore, to renew, to keep the world turning as it had since the day Atum first stood upon the Benben and looked into the waters of Nun. To the ancient Egyptians, the world was never fully separated from that original moment. Beneath the dust of centuries, behind the rituals and myths, one truth remained. The world had emerged from silence, from water, from darkness, and it could return there, should Ma'at be forgotten. This was not a threat, but a reminder, a call to remember the fragile thread that binds order to existence, a thread spun not of steel, but of words. In the beginning, there was no thunder, no clash of titans. There was only a breath, a word, and a world becoming real. Chapter 2: Ra and the Solar Barge. In the Egyptian sky, the sun was not merely a celestial object. It was a god, a will, a force of order in an unpredictable world, and his name was Ra. Ra was not the sun itself, but its soul, the divine presence at its heart. To the ancient Egyptians, his journey across the heavens was more than a passage of time. It was a cosmic event, played out daily, upon which the stability of the universe depended. With every sunrise, Ra was reborn. With every sunset, he died. And through his death, he protected creation from the darkness that always waited at the edges. Each day, Ra traveled across the sky in a celestial boat known as the Manjet, or the morning bark. He rose in the east, sailed across the world, and reached the western horizon at dusk. But his journey did not end there. At sunset, Ra entered the Duat, the underworld, aboard a second vessel, the Mesektet, or evening bark. In the Duat, he faced his greatest trial, the eternal struggle against the serpent of chaos. Apophis, or Apep, was the embodiment of disorder, a massive snake of darkness who sought to devour Ra's boat and end the cycle of light. Every night, Apophis attacked the solar barge. Every night, Ra and his divine entourage fought back. The gods who accompanied Ra, including Sia, perception, Heka, magic, and Mehen, a protective serpent who wrapped around the boat, battled the chaos serpent with spells, weapons, and light. This battle was not metaphorical to the Egyptians. It was real. They believed that their prayers, rituals, and recitations of protective spells helped Ra in his nightly voyage. Temples across Egypt echoed with hymns to Ra and curses against Apophis. Priests would act out the serpent's defeat, sometimes ritually destroying effigies of Apophis made from wax or clay. And yet, despite the danger, Ra always emerged victorious. At dawn, he was reborn, rising again from the eastern horizon, not weakened, but renewed. The cycle of death and rebirth was central to Egyptian cosmology. The sun's return was proof that Ma'at, the divine principle of balance and order, had triumphed once more over Isfet, the force of chaos. The symbolism of the solar bark extended far beyond astronomy. It touched every aspect of Egyptian life. The Nile itself was viewed as a reflection of Ra's journey. Its steady current mirrored the solar voyage, north to south like the sun's path across the sky. Pharaohs often aligned their tombs and temples to the solar movement, believing that death, like Ra's descent into the underworld, was not an end, but a passage. One of the most elaborate expressions of this belief can be seen in the royal tombs of the New Kingdom. The walls of these tombs, especially in the Valley of the Kings, are covered in sacred texts, the Amduat, the Book of Gates, and the Book of Caverns, all narrating Ra's nightly journey through the Duat. These texts map the underworld into 12 hours, each filled with guardians, obstacles, and transformations. Ra's passage through them symbolizes the soul's journey through death toward renewal. The Duat itself was not a place of punishment, but of transition. It was a liminal space, a sacred in-between. Within it, time and logic bent, gods merged, shapes shifted. Ra encountered forms of himself, sometimes as an old man, sometimes as a ram-headed deity, sometimes as a scarab beetle, Khepri, pushing the sun forward like a dung ball through the dark earth. Khepri, the morning sun, represented becoming, the force of creation in motion. The scarab, observed by Egyptians rolling spheres of dung across the sand, was seen as a natural symbol of the solar cycle. Like Ra, the beetle moved the world forward. Like Ra, it buried the past in darkness and brought it back in light. But Ra's journey was not only his own. He carried with him the hopes of the world, the order of heaven, the rhythm of life, the promise that tomorrow would come. For the Egyptians, every sunrise was an affirmation that the world still held together, that Ma'at still reigned, that Apophis had not won. This belief shaped behavior. Farmers rose early to greet the dawn, offering thanks to Ra for another day. Kings identified with him in state rituals, aligning their thrones and crowns with solar imagery. Even the structure of time reflected Ra's path. The 12 daylight hours were balanced by 12 hours of night, a mirror of the sun's voyage. Even Ra, the most powerful of gods, had to fight for the dawn. As centuries passed, Ra's identity merged with others. He became Amun-Ra, a fusion of the hidden force of Amun and the visible power of the sun. He became Ra-Horakti, Ra of the horizon, combining solar strength with the falcon eye of Horus. These integrations reflected Egypt's evolving theology, but the core remained. Ra was light, life, and the cycle that bound them both. He was the sun, the journey, the struggle, the renewal. And when the world seemed uncertain, when the desert winds howled and crops failed, the people looked east at dawn and waited. They waited to see if the bark would rise, if Ra had prevailed, and if the world would, for one more day, continue its dance between darkness and light. Chapter 3: The Tale of Isis and Osiris. The story of Isis and Osiris is one of ancient Egypt's most profound and enduring myths, embodying themes of love, betrayal, death, and rebirth. It illustrates not just the dramatic narrative of gods, but also the timeless human struggles of loss, grief, and the hope of renewal. Osiris was revered as the wise and benevolent king of Egypt, credited with teaching humanity the principles of civilization, agriculture, and law. His reign was marked by peace and prosperity as he brought stability and harmony to a previously chaotic land. His consort, Isis, was admired as the embodiment of devoted love, wisdom, and powerful magic. Together, they formed an ideal couple, symbolizing order and fertility throughout the Egyptian kingdom. Yet, the harmony they represented did not go unchallenged. Set, the god of storms, deserts, and chaos, and brother to Osiris, grew increasingly envious of Osiris's power and popularity. Driven by jealousy, Set devised a cunning and treacherous plan. He constructed a magnificent, richly ornamented chest precisely tailored to Osiris's measurements, then hosted a grand feast. At the climax of the festivities, Set presented the chest, announcing that whoever fit perfectly within it would claim it as a gift. One by one, the gods and guests attempted to fit inside, but none could. When Osiris lay down inside the chest, it fit him perfectly. Immediately, Set slammed the chest shut, sealing it and trapping Osiris within. Set then cast the chest into the Nile, confident that he had secured his victory and eliminated his rival. The Nile carried the chest downstream until it reached the shores of Byblos in Phoenicia. There, the chest lodged itself within the roots of a tree, which grew around it, eventually encapsulating Osiris within its trunk. The tree, miraculously fragrant and strong, attracted attention, and it was eventually felled and made into a pillar in the palace of the local king, who knew nothing of its divine occupant. Back in Egypt, Isis, devastated by the loss of her beloved husband, began a desperate search across the earth. Her grief was so profound, and her determination so fierce, that even the gods could not ignore her sorrow. Guided by rumors and signs, Isis journeyed tirelessly, eventually reaching Byblos, where she discovered the truth of Osiris's entombment within the pillar. Using her wisdom and magical powers, Isis managed to retrieve Osiris's body from the wooden prison and returned him to Egypt. She hid his remains in the marshes of the Nile Delta, intending to perform powerful rituals that would restore him to life. But Set, ever watchful, discovered her plans. In a rage, he seized Osiris's body, dismembering it into 14 pieces and scattering them across Egypt, hoping to permanently erase his brother's existence. Yet Isis's love and determination were unbreakable. Accompanied by her sister Nephthys, Isis traversed Egypt once more, collecting each scattered piece of Osiris. At every location where she found a fragment, Isis built a temple to honor Osiris, ensuring his memory and influence endured throughout the land. Having gathered all but one piece, Isis reassembled Osiris's body, weaving it back together with powerful spells and rituals. Through her unparalleled magical abilities, Isis managed to temporarily revive Osiris, though his return to life was incomplete and could not last indefinitely. In this brief reunion, however, Isis conceived a son, Horus, who would grow to embody the hope and justice that Egypt desperately needed. Osiris, unable to remain among the living, descended into the underworld, becoming the ruler and judge of the afterlife. There, he presided over the souls of the deceased, offering resurrection and eternal life to those who passed his judgment and upheld the virtues of Ma'at, truth, balance, and justice. Meanwhile, Isis raised Horus secretly, protecting him from Set's wrath and preparing him for the inevitable confrontation. Horus would eventually challenge and defeat Set, restoring order to Egypt and reclaiming the throne his father had lost. Through his victory, Horus not only avenged Osiris, but also reaffirmed the eternal cycle of justice, triumphing over chaos. The myth of Isis and Osiris thus resonated deeply with the Egyptians. It symbolized the perpetual struggle between order and chaos, life and death, and conveyed a powerful message about resilience, loyalty, and the enduring power of love. Temples dedicated to Isis flourished across Egypt and beyond, becoming centers of healing, magic, and hope, visited by those seeking solace and reassurance in the face of loss and uncertainty. In recounting the tale of Isis and Osiris, ancient Egyptians found comfort in the promise of renewal and rebirth, reinforced by the cyclical patterns they saw mirrored in the natural world around them. The Nile's annual flooding, which rejuvenated the land and ensured the continuation of life, echoed the divine cycle of death and resurrection embodied by Osiris. Thus, the story of Isis and Osiris became more than myth. It was an affirmation of life's triumph over death, order over chaos, and hope over despair, a timeless narrative deeply woven into the spiritual and cultural fabric of ancient Egypt. Chapter 4. Set, Chaos, Sand, and Storm. Set, the enigmatic and powerful god of deserts, storms, and chaos, holds a unique and complex position within ancient Egyptian mythology. Often depicted with the head of an unknown animal, with a long snout and squared ears, Set represented the raw and unpredictable forces of nature that were both feared and respected by the Egyptians. In early Egyptian history, Set was not simply a villain. Originally worshipped in Upper Egypt, particularly in the city of Ombos, he was revered as a protector of the sun god Ra, defending him against the serpent Apophis during Ra's nightly voyage through the underworld. Set's strength and ferocity made him an indispensable ally, maintaining cosmic order by combating the forces of chaos and darkness. However, Set's character evolved through the centuries. Over time, especially during periods of political upheaval, Set began to embody the darker aspects of chaos. He became associated with the barren desert, violent storms, and foreign lands. His role transformed into that of an antagonist, especially in relation to his brother Osiris. Set's envy and resentment toward Osiris culminated in one of the most famous myths of Egyptian mythology. He plotted to overthrow Osiris, tricking him into a coffin that was cast into the Nile. Set's betrayal did not end there. When Isis recovered Osiris's body, Set further desecrated it by scattering the remains across Egypt. This narrative firmly established Set as a symbol of treachery, disorder, and the threat of disruption to harmony and civilization. Yet, despite his darker deeds, Set remained an essential figure within the Egyptian pantheon. His destructive tendencies were balanced by a necessary role in the cycle of renewal and change. Chaos, as the Egyptians understood, was not merely destructive, it was also transformative. Set embodied the essential principle that stability without disruption leads to stagnation. His actions, though seemingly malevolent, often acted as catalysts for regeneration and growth. Set's dual nature is vividly illustrated in the story of his conflict with his nephew, Horus, the son of Osiris and Isis. Their rivalry was not merely a personal feud, but symbolized the eternal struggle between order and chaos. The two gods engaged in numerous contests and battles, each symbolizing different aspects of human experience and natural phenomena. One of their famous confrontations involved a series of contests judged by a council of gods to determine who would rule Egypt. These trials were not just about strength, they included wit, cunning, and resilience. Despite Set's considerable might and intelligence, Horus ultimately triumphed, symbolizing the victory of order over chaos. Yet Set was not entirely vanquished or destroyed, highlighting the Egyptians' nuanced understanding of balance. Chaos could be subdued but never completely eradicated. In fact, even after being defeated, Set continued to serve an important protective function. Pharaohs invoked Set's strength in rituals, particularly in defending Egypt's borders against foreign invasions and natural calamities. Military leaders sometimes identified with Set, believing that his fierce and uncompromising nature would grant them success in battle. Temples dedicated to Set existed throughout Egypt, particularly in border regions, where his protective and aggressive qualities were especially valued. Rituals conducted in these temples acknowledged both the necessity and danger of chaos, reflecting an understanding that the unpredictable forces Set represented were integral to the cycle of existence. Thus, Set's mythology underscores a profound philosophical insight. Chaos is an inevitable and essential part of life. Without disorder, order itself loses its meaning. Set reminds us that change, disruption, and even destruction are necessary components of renewal and growth. His presence in the Egyptian pantheon served as a constant reminder of the delicate balance required to maintain harmony within the cosmos and human society. In understanding Set, the Egyptians confronted the uncomfortable yet fundamental truth of existence, that chaos is not always an adversary, but sometimes a partner in creation. Through the tales of Set's conflict, betrayal, and eventual reconciliation, the Egyptians explored the complex and interwoven relationship between order and chaos, recognizing that both are equally necessary to sustain the dynamic equilibrium of the world. Chapter 5. The Weighing of the Heart. In ancient Egyptian belief, death was not the end but a critical step toward eternity, marked by the pivotal event known as the weighing of the heart. This ritual symbolized the ultimate judgment, determining whether a soul would achieve eternal peace or face annihilation. At its core, this process revolved around Ma'at, the principle of truth, justice, and cosmic order that governed both divine and human affairs. Upon death, the Egyptians believed the soul embarked on a complex journey through the Duat, the mysterious underworld filled with challenges, guardians, and trials. Central to this journey was the Hall of Two Truths, presided over by Osiris, the god of the afterlife and resurrection, assisted by a tribunal of 42 divine judges. Here, the deceased faced the ultimate test, the weighing of their heart against the feather of Ma'at. The heart, not the brain, was considered the center of thought, emotion, memory, and morality in ancient Egyptian culture. It held all the deeds, good and bad, performed during life. Thus, it served as the key to a person's true character and moral purity. The ceremony of weighing the heart was conducted by Anubis, the jackal-headed god associated with mummification and the afterlife. Anubis carefully placed the heart on one side of a scale, while on the other side rested the feather of Ma'at, symbolizing truth, harmony, and righteousness. If the heart was found equal in weight or lighter than the feather, it indicated a life lived in accordance with Ma'at, one of righteousness, balance, and integrity. Such souls were granted passage into eternal life, welcomed into the lush, peaceful fields of Aru, an idyllic paradise. There, they could exist perpetually, free from suffering, hunger, or pain, engaging in the activities they cherished in life. However, if the heart was heavier than the feather, burdened by wrongdoing, lies, and moral corruption, the consequences were dire. The heart was immediately consumed by Amit, a terrifying creature with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. This act was symbolic of the total destruction of the soul, meaning the deceased would cease to exist entirely, denied any form of eternal life. The weighing of the heart was not merely symbolic. It was deeply integrated into Egyptian culture. Texts such as the Book of the Dead provided guidance, prayers, and magical spells designed to help the deceased successfully navigate the judgment process. These texts emphasized the importance of living a virtuous life, stressing ethical conduct, honesty, charity, and respect for the gods and fellow humans. Significantly, Egyptians believed that even in the afterlife, it was essential to affirm innocence actively. The deceased would recite the negative confession, a list of 42 statements declaring actions they had not committed, ranging from "I have not stolen" to "I have not lied" and "I have not harmed others." This confession underscored the ethical standards expected of every individual and reaffirmed their adherence to Ma'at. The symbolism of the heart's weighing extended into everyday life, influencing the legal system and social expectations in ancient Egypt. Justice was deeply tied to religious belief, and courts often invoked the principles embodied by Ma'at. Truthfulness and moral responsibility were not merely social expectations but divine mandates. Thus, the fear of ultimate judgment was a powerful incentive for moral behavior. Moreover, Egyptians took great care in preparing for the afterlife. Mummification preserved the body, amulets protected the heart, and elaborate tomb inscriptions provided detailed instructions for the deceased to present themselves confidently before Osiris and the judges. The goal was clear: to demonstrate moral purity and alignment with cosmic truth. Thus, the weighing of the heart reveals much about ancient Egyptian values. It encapsulates their profound belief in accountability and the necessity of ethical conduct. It emphasizes the enduring power of truth, justice, and cosmic balance, which governed their lives and afterlives alike. To the Egyptians, living according to Ma'at was more than a duty. It was a sacred obligation ensuring harmony on earth and eternal peace beyond death. Chapter 6: Thoth and the Language of the Gods. Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, magic, and the measurement of time, held a unique and profound role in ancient Egyptian culture and mythology. Often depicted as an ibis-headed deity or occasionally as a baboon, Thoth represented intellect, knowledge, and divine communication. His mastery extended beyond mere written words. He was the scribe of the gods, the judge of divine disputes, and the creator of magical spells and sacred rituals. In Egyptian belief, Thoth's primary responsibility was recording the divine decrees and events that unfolded in both the mortal and divine realms. Every action, word, and moment was meticulously documented, ensuring that truth and balance prevailed. It was Thoth who documented the outcomes of the weighing of the heart ceremony, carefully noting the fate of each soul as they journeyed into the afterlife. His recordings ensured justice was upheld in both life and death. Thoth was also deeply connected with the invention of hieroglyphs, the sacred script used for religious texts, royal proclamations, and monumental inscriptions. According to mythology, Thoth gifted humanity with writing, allowing them to record history, laws, religious rites, and magical knowledge. This gift profoundly transformed Egyptian civilization, enabling the preservation and transmission of knowledge across generations. Hieroglyphs, known as words of the gods, were considered powerful tools that captured not only human thoughts, but also divine intentions. The act of writing in ancient Egypt was not merely practical, it was magical. Egyptians believed words held innate power, capable of influencing reality. Hieroglyphic inscriptions on temple walls, tombs, and papyrus scrolls were imbued with magical properties. Thoth himself was considered the originator of magical incantations, known as Heka. These spells, written or spoken, were used for healing, protection, and influencing the natural and supernatural worlds. Thoth's role extended further into the spiritual and cosmic realms. He was credited with maintaining universal order through precise measurements of time. Egyptians believed that Thoth created the calendar system, which accurately reflected lunar and solar cycles. This allowed them to predict critical events such as the Nile's annual flooding, which was essential for agriculture and survival. Thoth's calendar was a manifestation of divine order, aligning human activity with the rhythms of nature and the cosmos. Beyond writing and timekeeping, Thoth was revered as the mediator and counselor among the gods. His wisdom and impartiality made him the ideal judge and arbiter of divine disputes. One of the most significant examples of this role was his mediation between Horus and Set. Thoth's wisdom and diplomacy were instrumental in resolving their conflict, ultimately restoring peace and stability to Egypt. Thoth's extensive knowledge was symbolically stored in the legendary Book of Thoth, a mythical tome said to contain all secrets of the universe, including powerful spells, cosmic truths, and profound wisdom. Though its existence remains legendary, the concept of this book emphasized Thoth's role as the ultimate keeper of wisdom and cosmic balance. In temples dedicated to Thoth, priests specialized in various forms of knowledge: astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and magic. These temples functioned as centers of learning and intellectual discourse, attracting scholars and seekers from across Egypt and beyond. Rituals conducted within these temples emphasized the sacred power of words and symbols, reinforcing the belief that language and knowledge were divine gifts, essential for maintaining harmony in the world. Thoth's influence permeated every aspect of Egyptian life, from law and governance to religion and daily affairs. His legacy underscores the Egyptians' profound reverence for knowledge, communication, and the power of language. To the ancient Egyptians, words were not just vehicles for expression. They were divine tools capable of shaping reality, preserving memory, and influencing destiny. Through Thoth, ancient Egypt celebrated the profound connection between knowledge and power, wisdom and order, words and reality. His mythology encapsulated their belief that true understanding and harmony could only be achieved through careful observation, meticulous record-keeping, and respectful engagement with the mysteries of language and the cosmos. Chapter 7. Hidden Names, Hidden Powers. In ancient Egyptian belief, names were far more than mere identifiers. They held profound and powerful significance. A name, especially the true secret name of a god or an individual, was considered to embody the essence and power of that entity. Knowing someone's true name granted significant influence over them, allowing control or protection. This belief underscored much of Egyptian magical and religious practice. One of the most compelling stories illustrating the power of hidden names involves the sun god Ra and the goddess Isis. Ra was among the most powerful deities, ruling the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. Yet his true name was a closely guarded secret, known only to himself. Ra's true name held immense power, providing mastery over all his divine capabilities. Isis, renowned for her magical skill and determination, sought to uncover Ra's secret name to gain its immense power and protect herself and her unborn son, Horus. According to myth, Isis cleverly crafted a serpent from Ra's saliva mixed with earth. She placed the serpent along Ra's path, and when Ra was bitten, he fell gravely ill. No healing or magic could restore him because the serpent's bite was born of his own essence. In agony and desperation, Ra summoned the gods for help. Isis approached, offering her healing magic, but demanded his secret name as payment. Initially, Ra resisted, offering various lesser names, but none held the true power required to heal him. As his suffering grew unbearable, Ra relented, whispering his secret name into Isis's ear. Empowered by this ultimate knowledge, Isis performed powerful magic and cured Ra, demonstrating the immense strength contained within a true name. This story profoundly shaped Egyptian beliefs about secrecy and power. Gods and mortals alike understood that concealing one's true name safeguarded their autonomy and strength. Pharaohs and nobles often kept their birth names hidden, revealing them only under sacred or necessary circumstances. Their public titles served as masks, protecting their deeper, hidden identities and the power those identities conferred. Moreover, the act of naming was considered deeply sacred and symbolic. In naming a newborn, Egyptians believed they imparted certain qualities and destinies upon the child. Names often reflected hopes, virtues, or divine protection. Conversely, during rituals and spells, knowing an enemy's true name allowed priests and magicians to neutralize threats, using this knowledge to control or bind opponents magically. The belief in hidden names extended to funerary rites as well. Egyptians crafted elaborate tombs inscribed with protective texts, spells, and false names designed to mislead malevolent forces. The Book of the Dead included specific spells meant to shield the deceased's true name, thus ensuring safe passage through the perilous underworld. Temples across Egypt housed secret chambers where the true names of deities were carefully guarded. Priests preserved these names, reciting them only during crucial rituals, ensuring the gods' continuous favor and protection. This secrecy reinforced the sanctity and mystique surrounding Egyptian religion and magical practices. Understanding the power of names also meant acknowledging the profound connection between identity, essence, and authority. Names encapsulated a person's entire existence, their strengths, weaknesses, desires, and fears. Consequently, revealing or concealing names became a profound act of trust, power, and control. In essence, hidden names represented the boundary between knowledge and mystery, authority and vulnerability. For ancient Egyptians, navigating this boundary required wisdom, respect, and caution. Their intricate understanding of names as sources of power and protection deeply influenced their religion, magic, and daily lives, revealing a sophisticated view of the relationship between language, identity, and divine force. Through the myth of Isis and Ra, Egyptians illustrated the delicate balance between secrecy and revelation, protection and vulnerability. The concept of hidden names and hidden powers remains a compelling testament to their profound insight into the complexities of existence, identity, and the divine. Chapter 8. Temples, Rituals, and Sleep. In ancient Egypt, temples were far more than mere buildings. They were sacred spaces, embodiments of the cosmos and centers of spiritual life. Each temple served as the home of a specific deity, meticulously designed to mirror the universe and sustain the divine presence within. Rituals performed within these temples were not only acts of devotion, but essential practices believed to maintain cosmic order. Temples were carefully constructed to align with celestial events, emphasizing their connection to the divine. The layout symbolized the journey from the earthly world to the divine realm, with outer courts accessible to common worshippers and progressively sacred chambers leading to the innermost sanctuary, where only high priests could enter. This sanctuary housed the god statue, believed to be the physical vessel for the deity's essence. Daily rituals in temples were conducted by priests dedicated to serving and maintaining the deity's needs. These priests performed elaborate ceremonies that involved cleansing, clothing, feeding, and entertaining the gods through hymns, dances, and offerings. Ritual purity was paramount. Priests underwent rigorous purification rites, abstaining from certain foods and activities to ensure they remained spiritually clean. Nighttime within temples was particularly sacred. After the daily rituals concluded and the temple closed to the public, priests conducted private rites and ceremonies. They recited sacred texts and incantations, maintaining the divine presence and safeguarding against chaos and evil forces. These nightly rites were conducted in secrecy, accompanied by the burning of incense, soft chanting, and music, creating an atmosphere charged with mysticism and spiritual potency. Incense was central to Egyptian temple rituals, symbolizing purification and facilitating communication with the divine. The fragrance was believed to elevate prayers and invoke divine favor. Incense burners, intricately designed and often made from precious metals, were used in ceremonial practices, filling temples with fragrant smoke that symbolized the god's breath and presence. Music also played a vital role in temple worship. Priests and priestesses used instruments such as harps, flutes, drums, and sistra, rattles, during rituals to invoke and appease deities. These musical performances were believed to harmonize the earthly and divine realms, ensuring balance and order. The rhythmic chanting and melodic hymns created a meditative ambiance, promoting spiritual reflection and divine connection. Dreams and visions held significant religious importance, viewed as communications from the gods. Egyptians believed temples facilitated divine encounters through dreams. Pilgrims and priests seeking guidance or healing often spent nights sleeping within temple precincts, hoping to receive divine insights. Special chambers known as incubation chambers were designated for this purpose, where individuals sought prophetic dreams or divine interventions. Symbols were integral to Egyptian religious practice, representing profound cosmic and spiritual truths. Temples were richly adorned with hieroglyphs, carvings, and paintings depicting gods, mythological scenes, and symbolic imagery. These symbols were not merely decorative but encoded deep spiritual and cosmological meanings. Priests interpreted these symbols, using them in rituals and teachings to communicate divine wisdom and reinforce religious beliefs. The active religious life of temples underscored Egypt's understanding of religion as a living, dynamic force intertwined with everyday existence. Religion permeated every aspect of life, influencing governance, agriculture, justice, and personal behavior. Temples were not isolated religious spaces but vibrant community centers, engaging with the populace through festivals, processions, and public rituals. Annual festivals attracted large crowds, featuring elaborate processions carrying divine statues from temples into the streets. These celebrations reinforced community bonds, social harmony, and collective devotion. Festivals such as Opet and Hebsed revitalized the divine kingship, and renewed communal commitment to the gods, emphasizing the interconnectedness of society, cosmos, and the divine. In summary, ancient Egyptian temples were sacred hubs of worship, spiritual learning, and cultural life. Rituals, incense, music, dreams, and symbolic imagery created an immersive religious experience that actively engaged the senses and spirit. Through their temples and rituals, Egyptians celebrated the divine presence in all aspects of existence, ensuring cosmic order, spiritual purity, and communal harmony. These practices reveal a sophisticated civilization deeply attuned to the mysteries of the divine and the transformative power of sacred spaces and rites. Chapter 9. The Eternal Nile. In ancient Egypt, the Nile River was more than just a source of life-giving water. It was the very lifeblood of the civilization, a divine and eternal presence that shaped every aspect of existence. The Nile was both a physical and metaphysical force, representing cycles of rebirth, continuity, and the eternal flow of time. Its rhythms dictated agricultural practices, economic stability, social structures, and spiritual beliefs. For Egyptians, the Nile's annual flooding was an essential and divine event. It brought nutrient-rich silt, rejuvenating farmlands and ensuring abundant harvests. This cyclical flooding mirrored the Egyptian understanding of life, death, and rebirth, resonating deeply with their mythological narratives. Myths, much like the waters of the Nile, flowed continuously, returning in cycles to reinforce cultural identity and cosmic understanding. The Nile itself was worshipped as a god, personified as Hapi, the deity of fertility and abundance. Depicted as a robust figure bearing gifts of food and water, Hapi symbolized the river's generosity and life-giving force. Temples along the river honored this deity with elaborate rituals, offerings, and prayers, ensuring the continuity of its blessings. The Nile's eternal nature also inspired profound philosophical and spiritual reflections. Egyptians saw in its steady, unending flow a representation of eternal truths and divine order. The river became a powerful symbol for the afterlife, believed to flow eternally in the realm of the gods, nourishing souls as it nourished the land. This concept underscored the Egyptian vision of eternity, a place of perpetual renewal, abundance, and harmony. Myths and legends about the Nile and its divine nature permeated Egyptian culture, transmitted orally through generations and recorded meticulously in temple inscriptions, tombs, and papyri. These stories emphasize themes of harmony, balance, and the divine interaction with humanity. The recurring motifs of renewal and cyclical regeneration in Nile mythology reflected the Egyptians' profound understanding of natural and cosmic rhythms. These ancient narratives are not mere bedtime stories, but continue to speak powerfully to modern sensibilities, revealing universal truths about the human condition, the interconnectedness of life, and the cyclical nature of existence. Stories of gods battling chaos, divine rebirth, and the sacredness of the natural world resonate today, reminding us of our timeless quest for meaning, purpose, and harmony. The ancient Egyptian civilization, though long vanished, remains vibrant in modern consciousness, precisely because its myths capture enduring human experiences and emotions. They offer insights into our relationship with nature, spirituality, and community, providing a profound sense of continuity and connection across millennia. Nighttime stories about Egypt and the Nile are more than mere tales. They are echoes of a profound wisdom that saw the universe as a complex, interconnected system, sustained by harmony, balance, and divine favor. They remind us of humanity's perpetual struggle and aspiration to maintain order amid chaos, growth amid uncertainty, and life amid the inevitability of death. Today, the Nile still speaks, not just through the archaeological wonders scattered along its banks, but also through the timeless wisdom embedded in its myths. These stories teach us that change and continuity coexist, that life flows endlessly forward yet returns in familiar cycles, and that the sacred is always intimately entwined with the ordinary. Thus, the Nile remains eternal not only in its physical presence but also in the living legacy of Egypt's cultural and spiritual heritage. Through its waters, myths, and enduring mysteries, ancient Egypt continues to flow through our collective imagination, offering lessons and inspirations that are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. Chapter 10: A Journey Without End. The myths of ancient Egypt, like the Nile itself, flow endlessly through the sands of time. They have journeyed with us tonight, winding through darkness and stars, revealing echoes of truths both ancient and eternal. From the moment of creation, when the primeval waters stirred under the watchful gaze of noon, through the struggles and triumphs of gods who lived and loved, suffered and prevailed, these stories have illuminated paths of wisdom and offered gentle comfort as we drift into rest. We traveled alongside Ra as he crossed skies and underworlds, glimpsed Isis in her steadfast love and determination, and watched Osiris rise again, teaching us the deep meaning of renewal and hope. We faced chaos and change in the powerful form of Set, discovering that even disorder has its rightful place in the universe. We stood before the scales of Ma'at, pondering what it means to live truthfully, and listened as Thoth whispered the hidden languages of gods, words that shaped reality itself. We explored the profound power of names, understanding that in ancient Egypt, knowing a true name was to hold the essence of life itself. And then, through the tranquil halls of temples, we felt the night breathe with prayer, incense, and sacred dreams. Now, as we rest on the shores of the eternal Nile, we realize that these ancient stories are far more than bedtime tales. They are mirrors reflecting our own journeys, our struggles and triumphs, our endless search for meaning. They remind us that history is never truly silent. It is whispered from one generation to another, an eternal conversation we are privileged to continue. Our journey tonight was guided by myths that were born millennia ago, yet still speak clearly to our hearts, gently reminding us that beneath every legend lies a spark of eternal truth. Thank you for traveling through the sands and stars tonight with Bedtime Lectures. If this voyage through ancient Egypt brought peace to your night, please subscribe to our channel, click the bell, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us which stories or civilizations you'd like Bedtime Lectures to gently explore next. Close your eyes now, traveler of time. May your dreams sail once more with Ra across the night. Until we meet again beneath another ancient sky, sleep well.